like to call the July 16th, 2020 City Council meeting to order and turn over the opening to Councilmember Barber.
Thank you. Tonight I've invited Pastor Tommy Jeffcoat from the Kaysville Bible Church, and he's going to be offering our opening tonight. So thank you for doing that.
I'm grateful for the opportunity. Let's just open by having a word of prayer together, okay? Great God of heaven, we are grateful that you have entrusted to us this opportunity of leadership, and we acknowledge tonight that this is a weighty responsibility, and we acknowledge that if we are to execute the responsibilities that you've entrusted to us, the only way that we can be effective in that role is if we seek your wisdom. And so, Lord, we thank you that you offer it freely. Father, we thank you that you can give us the answers that we need to the most difficult questions. I thank you that you are not only the God of wisdom who grants your wisdom to all who would ask, but you're also the God of goodness, and that in giving your wisdom, you guide us into the decisions that are for the greatest good. Lord, help us to allow you to define that we would understand what the standard of goodness is based on who you are. As we look around at your creation, we see so many wonderfully good things, and we're reminded that you are a good God. And so tonight we ask that those characteristics of who you are would be evident in the meeting tonight, that your wisdom and your goodness would be clear for all to see, so that the city of Kaysville, everyone who's here, either in person or watching over the internet, would understand that what's being done is being done out of a desire to make wise decisions and good decisions. We pray these things in the name of our Savior. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. That was beautiful. Now stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And we want to acknowledge that Councilmember Tammy Tran is joining us via phone tonight. So we appreciate her making time for us. The first thing we're going to have is a proclamation declaring July 4th, 2020 as the day Kaysville came together independently. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you. This is kind of a fun thing to put together that I'll read. We had obviously a very unique 4th of July celebration, everyone in the city as well. So we wanted to talk about that, and we also are coinciding with the fact that July is National Parks and Rec Month, which is something that we always celebrate and acknowledge. So you get to see, hopefully my head is not in the way. Maybe you want to see that and not us. But as I read this, we'll have some pictures from our Freedom Drive that our first responders put together, and that it were really something that I wanted to make sure is captured in our city's history, because it was really beautiful. So, Kaysville City Proclamation, whereas July is National Parks and Recreation Month, and the COVID-19 global pandemic has greatly affected individuals and families in Kaysville and across the world, and drastically changed our city's traditional 4th of July celebrations. Whereas Kaysville came together through many independent celebrations leading up to July 4th, 2020, with patriotic displays, supporting local businesses, and celebrating our nation's independence. Whereas Kaysville Police and Fire Departments coordinated their own First Responders Freedom Drive to bring joy and celebration throughout the city on the morning of July 4th, 2020. Whereas the City of Kaysville appreciates the work of our first responders and realizes the importance of working together as elected officials, city administration, and police and fire departments to ensure public safety. Whereas many residents of Kaysville City came out to watch the drive-by and showed their support through homemade signs, cheers, and smiles at the sight of the fire trucks and police driving through their neighborhoods. Whereas this celebration and unity throughout the city are especially meaningful during this critical time in our city, state, and our nation. Whereas families and neighbors continue to enjoy the 4th of July with independent celebrations throughout the city, safely enjoying fireworks and time together. Whereas the City of Kaysville commends our residents for their innovation and resilience during this critical time and for coming together as a community independently, and marks the historic date, July 4th, 2020, in our city's history. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Michelle Barber, Mayor Pro Tempore of Kaysville City, along with the Kaysville City Council members, do hereby proclaim July 4th, 2020, the day that Kaysville came together independently.
And Mayor Witt.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. A few more minutes. Awesome. That's better to watch anyway.
Very good. All right, thank you for putting that together. Any conflict of interest?
No.
Nope. All right. We will go on to consent items. Would anybody like to move our consent agenda?
I'll make a,
Go ahead.
go ahead. Michelle.
I'll move that we move the consent items A and B.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Barber, seconded by Councilmember Lortz. Any questions? Any comments? All right, Councilmember Barber.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Councilmember Tran?
I'm sorry, you cut out for a minute. Did you ask?
Your vote on the consent.
Consent items.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that motion passes unanimously. All right. And now we're going on to, we don't have any action items this evening, so we will go directly to our work items. Work item A, fiber super parameters resolution discussion. I'm going to turn that over to Councilmember Barber.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine. So this item, which is why I'm really glad that we have this system where we have work items before action items. It gives us extra time for discussion and for residents to come hear about this. As followed along with the same timeline that we've had published since the very beginning of 2020, before a lot changed in this world, we're really glad we had this. So what this is going to do, this resolution, is to authorize the city council to issue bonds for the fiber to the home project contingent upon a public vote by Kaysville voters in November. So we're going to go through the actual super parameters here. I'll let Councilmember Lortz introduce those. And this is to make sure there is utmost clarity on exactly what is being worked on for this project and also why we're doing it in this order. As I've talked about a lot of times, one of the keys was to make sure there were no surprises, everybody understood, and part of that is making sure we knew exactly what the project will cost. That was one of our main commitments, and so that's what we're looking at this evening. So, Councilmember Lortz, do you want to introduce the super parameters themselves?
Yeah, and so maybe just to make sure everybody understands, for our next meeting, as we move this to an action, we will actually have the super parameter resolution, which we didn't include here. We just summarized the main key points, but that will be published out so everybody will be able to see those official documents. But you can see that basically we've walked through all the major components of what the bond parameters will be, which is the face value or how much principal will be borrowed. We've also included the total funding that we expect to receive on that bond raise, because right now there's a premium when you issue bonds, so you actually get paid more than $1 for $1 principal. And so you see we expect to borrow about $21 to $22 million. The resolution says up to $22 million as was in the public hearing. We expect that will generate between $24 and $25 million of total funding. The coupon rate on the bonds will be between 4% and 5%, but the true interest cost we've approximated at 3.15%. In speaking with our bond consultant today, they're estimating that rates right now are between 2.25 and 2.5%. Next week, UIA will be issuing bonds for Clearfield to do a Utopia project, and so that'll be a very good comparable for Kaysville to understand what we might be able to get in the market. You'll see that we've also said that the bond will be secured by the fiber infrastructure fees charged to those who subscribe for service, but will also be guaranteed by sales and franchise taxes. There will not be any property taxes pledged for this bond. We anticipate to have a capitalized interest fund for the first 2 years of interest expense so that the bonds actually don't have any payments due from the project for over 2 years. And then they will begin at a lower level than the longer terms that allows the project to build and grow subscribers. It doesn't force a high obligation from day one. We've also put in the parameters for a reserve fund, which would pay the final year of the bonds or protect against a default. And we've shown the expected amount. Talking with the consultants today, they don't anticipate that we will need a reserve fund. And so if that reserve fund is removed, then that will save $1.4 million in borrowing, but about $2.3 million including interest. And that would equate to about 350 homes being removed from our self-sustaining level that's shown in the table below. We've also included the issuance cost, which is the underwriting fees and the issuing costs for the bonds. We have planned to have funds to reimburse for all expenses for this project through the election so that it will put any monies that we have spent from authorizations previously back into the general fund. You'll see that we're expecting to actually have funding in February of 2021. Our consultants suggest that given the election, they don't think that we should be trying to go in the bond market right after the election, but wait till after the end of the year, and so go into the bond market in January and February. And you'll see that the first bond interest and principal payment would be due about April 15th of 2023. We've shown on the bottom table below the parameters kind of scenarios as to what it would take to be self-sustaining for this project. As you've heard me kind of outline, we've tried to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So you'll see that we've listed a 4,200 home subscriptions necessary to be self-sustaining and pay the bond off in 30 years. As I mentioned, if we don't need the reserve fund, that drops by 350. If we're able to get the interest rates of today, that would drop another 550 subscribers off to the requirement. And so it would drop from 4,200 to 3,300 to be able to be self-sustaining. We expect to have between 5,000 and 5,500 subscribers based upon the survey we did last October and the response rate where we had 57% of the citizens respond, and a majority of them said they would subscribe. Almost 3,000 people said they would subscribe to Kaysville Fiber. If we applied that to the remainder of the city, we would be well over 5,500 subscribers within the city. We hope that that's where it'll get to, and it'll probably take 4 or 5 years to get to that level. And that's why we've tried to prepare all the obligations to allow for that growth to occur over time. Some projects have been upwards of 70% take rate, and so you see we show a best case that if we have a 70% take rate or 7,000 resident or subscribers, then the bond would be paid off actually in 15 to 16 years. At the expected case, we would pay the bond off in 22 to 23 years. So we are, again, planning for the worst, hoping for the best, but making sure that we can survive or sustain ourselves in any situation. Just a couple other comments, because I know it's been raised. It was raised in the public hearing about the risk with not having enough subscribers. So there's a few things that I might want to make sure that the residents understand. Number one, we need 50+% of the city to say yes on the project before we can go forward. And that is in a presidential election year where Kaysville generally gets more than 80% of registered voters coming out to vote. In 2016, I think it was about 86% of registered voters voted. So if we have to get 50%, that means that we have got to get a lot of people to say yes, but then turn around and not subscribe. I don't think that is realistically what will happen. I think people are excited about this project based on all the conversations we've had, the value that it is bringing to the table, and the competition that it'll allow in the community for services. The second is to remember, no payments due until April of 2023, lower principal payments for the first 8 years of the bond, so we don't have to be self-sustaining for 4.5 years. We are also working on how we can expedite construction. As you heard from Corning when they talked, they think they will be able to do the network in less than 24 months, including all planning and design. And working with the Connext on the home connections, they believe we can do that in less than 30 months versus the 36 months that we had planned. And so if we can do those faster, that will only help in the subscriptions, as obviously more homes available, more homes can subscribe. That's what I have, Mayor.
All right, excellent. So any comments, any questions?
You know,
Councilmember Blackham.
I had some questions earlier about the take rate and the current amount of, because there was some discrepancy on, we had, you know, it was said from Public Works that we.
Premises, yeah.
Yeah, we'd had maybe only
Yeah.
8,200 to 8,400 water meters, and so I was thinking that the 90, but we went through today and did a lot of checking on actual, how many people do we really bill for water meters and how many do we really bill for power meters. And so it came out that it was about 9,000, 9,300,
Yeah.
something like that. So we're right there with the numbers. So looking at the numbers that Andre's come up with and that, I feel very comfortable. I was afraid we were like 10% off, but we're not. When we went and got the actual from the person who sends the bills out to the people and collects, these numbers are good. And so I think this table does reflect what the take rate's going to have to be, and obviously that was what Andre just talked about is actually even better news. You know, if the interest rates are lower, and so, you know,
That's good.
it looks good.
Councilmember Tran, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, did you say me?
Yes, I called on you.
Okay, thank you. So my question is, Andre, I know that we're hoping that we have to get at least 50% affirmative vote in order to move forward. And we need at least a 38% take rate. I know that our assumption is based upon the data that we've received so far that we'll get that. What happens if we don't? Does it at that point become some sort of a tax, or does that, I mean, I know that we've asked this question multiple times, but will you answer it again?
Sure. So if we're able to get more than 50% of the vote to approve the project and then not be able to get, let's just say 40% take rate to be self-sustaining, then that would require tax subsidy from the sales and franchise taxes. But again, that's like 5 years down the road, and so we'll be able to see how that's progressing as we go along. So it's not a day one thing.
And but also adjust the
And then
rates for those that are paying.
And then it's just a
Yeah.
matter of, okay, how far off? If we're off by 100 residents or 100 subscribers, then, you know, you're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're talking about, you know, $30,000 a year would be the amount if you were off by that. But if we'd also get these other things mitigating it, lower interest rates, no reserve fund, then all of a sudden you drop that down from, you know, 40% to 30%. We already know that we have 30% of the city is interested.
Do you want to talk about businesses too? How that'll help?
Yeah, so the other thing, just to be clear on that, is we have not included any businesses subscribing on the network. It's all residential based. And if we have businesses subscribe, generally they generate about twice the revenue of a residential subscriber because they have higher use. And so that would then obviously decrease the amount of residences we would need to be able to be self-sustaining.
Thank you. Anything else?
Okay, Thanks. Well, I was just wondering, you've heard, okay, what if between now and then, other ISP providers that are already existing step it up and they offer better options for fiber, and all of a sudden people think, well, okay, this is a good option, I'm gonna go with that instead. That's just worst case scenario, and understand that, but thanks for adding the clarity as to what will happen if that actually did happen.
So one other thing that we've just tentatively launched this week is actually a wait list for Kaysville Fiber, which allows people to go out and put their name on the list to say that they are interested or express how interested they are in subscribing to Kaysville Fiber. We've listed the prices that we'll talk about here in a couple items. But that website is actually live now. We'll have a link on the new kaysvillefiber.com website that people can link to that, and Michelle can talk
Yeah.
a little bit more about that here now or later.
Yeah, yeah, we can talk about that when we get to the rate
Okay.
part. What I was
Okay.
I had one more comment.
Thanks. Can I ask one other question?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, so this is a question that people have asked me, and I know it's been asked and answered also, but will you answer it again, just so that we've got it here? Aside from, well, yeah, just the question is, why are we so keen on wanting to do this? Will you just, in a nutshell, summarize that really quickly so that we've got an answer to that question? Not you specifically, but, Kaysville.
Right. Why Kaysville?
Councilman Barber, do you want to do that one?
Yeah.
Councilmember Barber.
Absolutely. So I look at this from a bigger perspective than just me personally. When we look at the necessary parts of our lives, data connectivity, internet connectivity is undoubtedly an extremely important part. I don't think anybody here is going to argue that. And when you look at what it takes to provide good service, those come down to a few things. Choice and competition come to the top of that. And there's a really high barrier to entry in providing those things. And so we're really thankful for the providers that we've had in the city all around the nation that have taken care of us, but they've been about the same. And so I'm really glad that government is able to come in and actually facilitate allowing more private companies to compete, to bring great service, great opportunities to come in there through better infrastructure. And of all the projects I like to be part of, I think all in local government, it's infrastructure projects. It's things that directly benefit the lives of residents. And so this is a great example of that. And like we said in the communications, we have the benefit of learning from a lot of other municipal fiber projects, both successes and failures. And it's put us in a position of being very cautious. You can see a lot of work and a lot of details going in because we have seen what it takes to be successful. And it's really exciting to look around in other cities and seeing what a benefit it can be to the city and also as residents at home, but also to the city as a whole. We learn all about smart cities, what it takes to connect all of those things that Councilmember Blackham just talked about, all of our power meters, all of our water meters. That is the future. And so I think this is a great place for government to be involved.
And I'll just add that, I look at superfast internet as a utility. I do see it as that. It's been, I don't think 5 years ago I would have said that. I do believe that is the case now. And I do feel that having all residents of Kaysville have access to superfast internet fiber is crucial to not only advances in healthcare, in education, in the economy, arts, science. I think these are the roads of the future. And so that is why it's important. And so as a city, I think it's important to put these roads in and allow all different businesses to be able to travel on those roads, to give the access to our residents to be able to have these good things. So that's why it's important that we do this. If a private business would have come in and built out the infrastructure, that would have been great. But it has not happened. So therefore, we're stepping in and but it's going to be paid for by those who subscribe and use it. So I think it's a win-win. All right. What other questions, Councilmember Tran?
No, thank you for that.
Okay, all right, wonderful.
I had one more comment on that, if I
Yes,
can.
please.
Councilmember Brockham brought up a good point when we're so easily able to go ask our water department, power department, all of those things, which are becoming automated and smart. So, one thing Kaysville does really well that we've improved and improved upon, I think all of us have seen, is we have really great utilities. We take really good care of our residents. And so a huge thank you to those that have laid the groundwork before us in this city. So thank you to that.
Yeah, very good. All right. I think we might want to have a motion to move this to an action item.
I'll make a motion that we move the fiber revenue bond parameters to action on our next meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Lortz, seconded by Councilmember Barber. Any comments at this time?
I just want to reinforce again that the super parameters will only apply if the election approves the project. By going to moving these towards an action item to approve them, it does not mean the city will bond prior to the election.
Very good. All right. Okay, Councilmember Tran, what's your vote?
I,
Aye.
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 Okay, motion is unanimous. Let's go on to fiber ballot initiative discussion. All right.
Okay, I definitely have some discussion about this, but
Do you want me to introduce it
Let's-
first? Is
yeah,
that okay?
introduce it,
present
and
it.
then we'll do some discussion.
Absolutely. So, one of the benefits of having this timeline laid out was to give everybody a lot of time, because you think of a vote that happens November 6th, you just show up there. But there's actually a ton of work that goes into it. Andre kept talking about our bond attorneys that are working right now at no cost to the city, and they've been really beneficial in making sure that we put this project the right way on the ballot. And we're kind of blazing our own trail, because things that usually go on the ballot are general obligation bonds, which this is not, and so there isn't a lot of provision there. But what we chose to do is err on the side of making sure we have every basis covered in putting this project on there, and making sure everyone sees the language, gets very familiar with it. We have time to adjust it as we need to, which is great, which is why we're doing it in this fashion. And then no one should be surprised when they open up their ballot come November. So I'm actually really glad that we have this. This is also on the website, newkaysvillefiber.com, where you can go look at. Obviously, it hasn't been referred yet, so we have some time to adjust it and improve it, which is why once again, broken record, I'm really glad we had this process, glad that we have these work items to work on these things together. And so even though it's not required to actually list out the bond itself, the bond amount, we wanted to be extremely clear and open so everyone knows exactly what they are voting for. And so that's what you see on the ballot item right now.
Okay. All right. There it is.
Yeah.
So,
Councilmember Blackham.
the comments that I had on the bond that I wanted to go, because this is a bond. Any way you look at it, whether a GO bond is obviously backed by property tax, and usually a municipal building bond is usually backed by property tax or other revenues. So I wanted to make it perfectly clear, because, like I said, with this project, I've always said, if the people vote for it and they want it, then I will back it. And to do that, it's got to be as clear and concise as possibly could be. And because ultimately, as we've talked about, if the take rate is not there, or we're talking a 30-year bond. We don't know what technology is going to be like in 25 years from now. And so there's a possibility that people could drop off of this. I don't know that that would ever happen. I don't know. But yet it is a 30-year bond. So I wanted to make sure that the bond language is transparent as possible. And people need to understand, even though it's not a GO bond, it's a revenue bond. And revenue bonds are backed by sales tax and franchise taxes. So I definitely want that added into the language to show that, because right now it's a little misguiding where it says revenue bond obligations for which no property tax will be pledged. That kind of, at some people, they might think, well, bonds are backed by property tax. Well, this is a little different because it's a revenue bond, and truly, revenue bonds do not have to go to a vote. But the reason this is going to a vote is because it's a 30-year, $22 million bond that the Kaysville citizens hopefully will pay for with the take rate and the people who actually subscribe to the service. But if something happens, Kaysville City is on the hook for the bond amount for 30 years. And so I just, after the wordage of revenue bonds, parentheses, I wanted to say backed by property sales tax and franchise tax. At least in there, so people understand there is still obligation that you have to back that bond, regardless of whether you have the amount. And hopefully, it turns out great. The people who, if it gets voted in, we get a good amount of people signed up for it, and they just pay for it. Because I love the idea that if you don't want it, you don't have to have it. And if you want to join it later, there's no penalty for it. Those are the things that I had asked for, and I know that they've worked hard, and I think a lot of people have asked for. When I say I asked for, it's because I'm just speaking
Yeah.
for the people who talk to me. So I think you've done all that, but I want to make sure, because a lot of times when you get into that ballot and you're voting for something, the language is so difficult or misguiding, you don't quite understand. And I think this is really clear, other than the one thing, it didn't show that there was any backing for the revenue bond. And by adding those 3 or 4 little words, I think it shows that, and lets people know that you are on the hook for this bond if it doesn't meet the take rate.
I think that's, yeah.
Councilmember Barber.
I-
Councilmember Barber, then Councilmember Tran.
And once again, I was really glad, that shows a lot. All of our council members that take the time to look at these things, talk to their representatives. This is representative government working very well. And so we got that feedback. I actually think it's a really good idea. I think we have time, we can adjust it. It's only a few words to put in there. I think it's fantastic. And so what we would do is we would modify it, and then that's what we would vote on next week.
Councilmember Tran.
Thank you. I agree 100% with what Mike's saying, and I'm grateful that, that we're looking at progress. And it's because even though we hope this all works and it's all great, we need to know and be really clear on what we're voting for so that we all went in, eyes wide open, full disclosure. And if it's really what we want, and it sounds like it is, then great, we're all in and we do it. And if it's not, then we know that too. Because at the end of the day, it's just numbers, and it is based on data, and I understand that. But people can change their minds, so I 100% support that. And if we make those changes and add that detail, I'm on board, because I think this is something people definitely need to be able to weigh in on.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lortz.
Yeah, so Councilmember Blackham gave me a heads up on his concern, and so I reached out to our bond counsel and asked for a suggestion on how we would change that wording. And so I'm just going to read it through and include, and I'll stop there when we do that, but it says, shall the City Council, the Council of Kaysville City, Utah, the city, be authorized to acquire, construct, own, and operate a municipal fiber network and to finance the cost thereof with a revenue bond obligation, and then insert, backed by sales and franchise taxes, but for which no property taxes will be pledged, collectively the Kaysville Municipal Fiber Project, in a principal amount not to exceed $22 million and mature not more than 30 years from the date of issuance of the bonds. And then the options are, you can vote yes for the Kaysville Municipal Fiber Project or no against the Kaysville Municipal Fiber Project.
Okay, very good. All right,
That is excellent.
all right.
Sincere thank you to.
Yes, thanks for,
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you very much. I really
Yeah.
appreciate that, because I just want to be so open and clear that people understand it is a bond.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you have to pay it.
That's right.
Correct.
Very good.
And one comment on that.
Yes, Councilmember Barber.
We have Councilmember Adams, who's not here this evening, and I didn't speak to him specifically about this item. I don't know if he saw that, but he had really similar feedback. So I just wanted to voice his thoughts on this. I know they're work items, so he's not obviously voting, but he had just along the very same lines, and he's really supportive of putting it on the ballot, making sure it's as transparent as possible. And the other thing I was going to say is that along with the actual item that you see on there is also the voter information pamphlet that comes. And that, we're all very familiar with those. That gives a lot of details as well. So we'll make sure that is also very clear, and as well as being on the website and all the communications. So I don't think we can over communicate at this point. So thank you.
Okay. All right. I think we should have a motion to put this as an action item.
With the changes, should we put that in there?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll make a motion that we go ahead and move the proposition to an action item with the changes that we've talked about.
We'll need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Blackham, seconded by Councilmember Lortz. Any comments? Excellent. Councilmember Lortz.
Aye.
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 And Councilmember Tran?
Aye.
Okay, motion is unanimous. All right, fiber rate schedule resolution discussion. Councilmember Barber.
Yeah, Andre, Councilmember Lawrence, you can
You want me to
introduce.
start
Councilmember
this one?
Lortz.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've had this published previously. We've made a few changes to this schedule from what has previously been published after we've had conversations with one of the winning bidders, Connext. There was a lot of discussion around, would Connext be an ISP on the network, or would they just be the operations vendor for us? We think we have come to an arrangement where they can be an ISP and still allow for open competition on the network while they operate it, and we're working through those details in their contract. But all of these prices are acceptable to Connext to offer when we begin to initiate Kaysville Fiber. So the first change I want to mention is the 25/3 megabit service, or a basic broadband service. Before that, it had a TBD, and it indicated it was for low income or heat qualified residents. The $39.95 price point is actually for anyone that would like that basic broadband service. We are still working through the details for a heat qualified resident to receive a discount off of that rate of $39.95. That will be coming later. It's not a significant portion of our city that is eligible for that heat program, but we will have that disclosed prior to the election. The other prices and service levels have remained the same, so those have not changed. We've tried to make sure we are very clear there are no connection fees, there are no upfront costs. This includes the fiber modem, so it takes fiber all the way from the street to the side of your home, inside of your home, to a modem, and then from that modem, you can connect normal Cat5 and Cat6 network cables to your current Wi-Fi router, or to your computers or other devices, and however you're connecting today. We are not including a Wi-Fi router as part of the normal install. It will be an option that you can do for an extra cost, either with the ISP, or you can go purchase your own if you'd like to upgrade your Wi-Fi router. Again, just to kind of reiterate, our goals in this project is to first pay off the bond as quickly as possible before we really look at reducing rates. So we will have standard rates set out for all ISPs as to what it costs for a port on the network. So internet service providers lease ports from network operators to be able to provide service to customers, and the city will charge the ISPs for that, and that becomes what funds the operations and maintenance of the network. So the fiber fee is to fund the construction. The operations and maintenance is funded by port fees that the ISPs will pay to Kaysville for that. We have begun discussions with other ISPs as well, as we started to set these frameworks for rates, and those are ongoing conversations, and as soon as we have commitments, we will begin to announce the other ISPs that have committed to join the Kaysville Fiber Network and to offer services. And even if there are additional services that will be offered, such as voice over IP telephone services and/or television or video streaming services, that could be bundled with your internet services. You'll notice on here, we still have not published a commercial service level. We are working with Connext and with some business partners to discuss what's a fair fee schedule to charge for businesses. It's a whole different ballgame when you look at a business that operates. Some businesses have lots of employees using services all day long, and so they will have a higher bandwidth need than a small business may need, or a home business. And some businesses actually do streaming services which have a very significantly high bandwidth need. And so we're trying to make sure we accommodate for all those different levels. We want to make sure it's fair and it's reasonable, both to the ISP, to Kaysville Fiber, and to the business. And then finally, at the bottom, excuse me, talking too much. At the bottom, we have an option that if people would like to prepay the infrastructure rather than pay it monthly, they can do that with an upfront payment of $2,700. Then you'll see that there's a adjusted monthly ISP rate below for the different service levels that is lower because you've removed the fiber fee from those rate schedules. And so that's an option if people want to do it. We've calculated that based upon the assumptions in the model, if the bond is paid off in 15 years, paying up front would be equivalent to receiving a 5.5% interest rate on your money. And if it goes the full 30 years, you get paid essentially a 9% interest rate for paying up front. So for those who can and desire to do that and have a lower monthly cost, that's an option. It will not be published until we're ready, until it's approved on the ballot, and then that option will be published for people when they start signing up for service.
All right, very good. Okay, any comments, questions on this?
I'll
Councilmember
say.
Barber.
The reason I was smiling is because only a financial guy like Andre would break it down to give you the actual return on your
Percentage.
investment. But I'll break it down in my terms that I just like having more money in my family's monthly budget. So that's why I look at it that way. I think it's a great option for those who want to. We don't want it to, sometimes when you put that number out there, even though you put a million explanations, this is not required, you do not have to pay up front, just seeing that number can set off some alarms in some people's minds. And I completely understand that because $2,700 is a lot. And so that's why we'll publish it after. It'll be available. It's not required. It's a great investment, as we've put up there. But really, in my household, we look at things very differently. So I'm excited for that option.
Okay. Councilmember Tran, any comments?
No, thank you, I'm good.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Blackham. Okay. Councilmember Lortz.
I'm sorry, there's two other things I wanted to mention. So the one, we've also listed a no ISP service on this fee schedule. So if somebody requests to connect to Kaysville Fiber, they have opted in to the network, and so they would have that $25 a month fiber fee on their utility bill until they ended their utilities with the city. But they have the option to cancel their ISP service whenever they want to, based upon their agreement with the ISP. So if they decide to go on and try it for a few months, and then they say, I don't like the ISPs, and they drop off, they would still be committed to that ISP, or to the fiber fee, because they've had us connect their home to the network. We want to make sure that's clear, that they do have choice on their ISPs and how long they take it, but once they've opted into the network, they have opted in. How that relates to renters is going to be similar, that if they opt in and we will connect them, they will have that fee until they move out. The landlord will not be responsible for that fiber fee. The next resident will then have the option to say, yes, I want to connect, or no, I don't. Similarly, a homeowner, if they sell their home and move, the next resident that comes in will have the option to connect or not connect. If the prepayment has been made, that can then be rolled over to the new homeowner, or the new homeowner has the choice to say, yes, I want to activate service. Once they activate service, then they're subject to the fiber fee.
What a great deal.
Just
Councilmember
one
Blackham.
question, because I got a little confused on that. So if I'm a homeowner and I decide I want it, and then after a year I decide I don't want it, I'm not selling my house, I'm not moving, I can discontinue my
You can
service.
discontinue the internet service, and so that portion of the fee will go away, but you've been connected to the network, so you'll continue to pay for the network
Forever,
until it's paid off.
the 30 years. So you cannot, so once you opt in, you can't
Yeah,
really
because
opt out.
the city has now expended the money to connect your home to the network.
Okay.
The
Just so
other,
we're
the other
clear.
one, just to, again, on the bottom schedule, where we talk about the prepayment up front, those rates also represent what we anticipate the fees will be for internet service after the bond is paid off. So once the bond is paid off, all of the infrastructure fee drops down to like $3 for administrative costs only. And so the internet costs will drop dramatically, $20 or so.
Nice. All right. Any other comments at this time? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to move this to an action item.
I'll make a motion that we move the Kaysville Fiber rate schedule to action at our next meeting.
Second,
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Lortz, seconded by Councilmember Tran. Any comments? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. Councilmember Blackham.
Aye.
Aye.
Councilmember Tran.
aye.
Aye.
Motion is unanimous. Thank you. All right. Now we have call to the public. It is a 3-minute limit, and we have one person signed up, and it is Steve Hyatt.
Good evening, council, mayor. My name is Steve Hyatt. I'm a resident of Kaysville City. I think some of my questions that I had that I was going to ask you tonight were answered in the discussion. I appreciate your willingness. I think the suggestion that was made to make a little more clear on the bond was great, a great suggestion, and appreciate the council considering that. I also appreciate the clarification on the build, the upfront build. I always say don't do math in public, but as I was comparing the 25 meg option, it looked like it would take about 11 years to break even. At least my sense was from most of the information I read that I could sign up and then I could just decide I don't want it anymore. But if I'm understanding it correctly, I can sign up and I can discontinue the internet service, but I still need to stay on. Maybe that part was, is it just until I pay my allotment, or is it for the entire part of the bill? That clarification would be, I know this isn't a question and answer, so I got to make sure I give all the time to the people behind me to speak. And then the two other questions, maybe just open questions. I remember when the city considered a GO bond for a police station several years ago, we got in trouble for sending out a mailer that appeared to be biased in its language. And I was just curious, I wanted to make sure that was maybe just offered as something, maybe that's been covered, maybe it's totally good. And then you also talked about a voter information pamphlet. Most voter information pamphlets will have an opinion for and then an opinion against. And so I wanted to just make sure that was still planning to be considered. And then the last thing too, and I did note, I did receive a postcard last week. Is this, and I guess you can't answer this either, but is this officially the public hearing that was today at 6 o'clock that I was the only one that spoke at? Is that going to, other than the election, be the only public comment between, okay, all right. Thank you for the non-answer in the public comment. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I think that answered my question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember reports. Councilmember Lortz, would you like to go first?
Sure. From the power department, they've been very reliable, much more so than my internet service lately. Had some ups and downs with my carrier, but I just think I'm going to respond to a couple of the questions that brought up by Mr. Hyatt. So the public hearings that will be held, they are on our timeline on the website, newkaysvillefiber.com. We will have another bond hearing in September. Because the bond is on the ballot, there's specified times to have hearings for that. As Michelle said, or as Councilmember Barber indicated, we're in kind of a middle ground here where we have a revenue bond, but also a election bond. And so we are trying to follow both of those. So we'll actually have 2 hearings on the bond. The next one will be on September 17th. We will also have on October 1st a public meeting regarding the proposition. So we've got 2 more public meetings that will be related specifically to the project, to make sure that we have plenty of input and feedback from our citizens. And we appreciate the cautions that were provided to us.
Thank you. Councilmember Blackham, any?
I
Council
sat down
report.
for an hour or so today with Jared, who is over our water department, and just got some clarification. Good guy. They're working hard, you know, and so water system is, they need some help. But it was just good to sit down with them. I like the open forum. I like sitting down with the guys who are actually out there doing the work, and I appreciated him meeting with me.
Excellent. Councilmember Tran?
Just that we've been working with community development and the business support group to create some business incentives for Kaysville using the CARES money, and it's going really well, so we're excited about it.
Excellent.
As well as the Kaysville Police Department, I don't want to forget them. They had a great idea as far as Kaysville cash, their Kaysville cash program.
Excellent.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Next time you pull me over. 'Cause it has happened.
Councilmember Barber?
Parks and Rec, National Parks and Rec Month, I think we already celebrated that, and that's about it. Rec programs, don't be like me and forget to sign your kids up, which I've done this whole summer. So they're already live for the fall, and we're very, very carefully following all of the directions from the county health department as far as those go. So feel free to sign up. If things change, we'll communicate with you, so.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to say that obviously numbers here in Davis County are going up, and I would encourage everybody to commit to the Moonshot Challenge, which is for 55 days to wear your mask when you go out in public. Please also limit your interactions with folks if not necessary, and obviously hand washing, etc. So please be doing that. We don't want to have to be forced to do what we know we need to do already, so please be responsible. The second thing that I do want to bring up is that led by Cache County, this Sunday, there's going to be a day of prayer. It's part of our heritage as Utahns to rely on the auspices of our Creator. So I would encourage everyone to take advantage of this opportunity to specifically pray and fast as necessary, that we will be given relief from this plague. So I would encourage everyone to participate in that as according to your own dictates. So we do not, our city manager is on vacation.
He's on the phone.
Hi, city manager, would you like to make any comments?
Mayor, I just wanted to be able to speak once. That's all I need to do. Thank you.
Okay.
Just mark me
to
present,
show-
please.
Well, I feel so much better.
Okay, that you made the
I just wanted
minutes.
to
You
play
made,
this way.
okay, very good. All right. All right, and so I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
moved.
adjourn.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Barber, seconded by Councilmember Blackham. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you. And that was
Thank you.
under an
Mike, you
hour.